All right. What's up, guys? We are going live right now. It's Tuesday night, January 7th, 2025. We're going to be talking about the habits you need to succeed as a strength athlete in strength sports, particularly strongman. So, we will be doing a little mini presentation and seminar here. Going to set up on the whiteboard behind me. We'll give this about 90 seconds or so for anybody to pop in. But if not, we're just going to roll right in and hit it live. If you are joining me live, I want to invite you to, pop some questions in. If there's anything, you want to cover, you would like to contribute, I'd like to make these interactive. So please feel free to offer your insights, like anything that's helped you or any of that. Or if you're watching on the replay, drop a comment, shoot me a message. All of my social handles across everything are at Stephen M. Coin. So connect with me on Instagram, Facebook, X, whatever you'd like. So that's that. I think this is an important topic because, a lot of people know what they have to do, and you get caught up in decision fatigue. Some people would call that anxiety in some ways, where you're getting caught up in, the pressures of what you have to do and what you're supposed to do. But what we really want to look for is, how can we put these things on autopilot? How can we become this person who just automatically does these different things? And as we go through, I'm going to want you to think about, what are you doing right now that is successful? What are the things that you need to implement, but also what's the easiest to implement first? So as we, build habits, I want you to think of this as compounding interest, because if we do this correctly, one habit should stack on top of another that complements that first one. And then that third one should complement those first two. So we should be able to get more benefit out of each one in succession. So when you do this correctly, it's this compounding interest. We're not going to have a straight line like this. You're going to start to swoop up and make a ton of progress really quick. So let's go ahead and dive in here. So we're going to talk again about habits. All right, so habits, you need to think of these as, things that you're doing subconsciously, things that you're not even thinking about, right? Like, everybody knows how to tie their shoes without even thinking about it. Everybody knows how to breathe without even thinking about it. So let's start with kind of the easiest and simplest one, and that is you have to train. Right? Now, here's the thing with training is that a lot of people do not have a training program. A lot of people are just working out and kind of going in day to day, deciding like, well, what do I feel like doing this day? Or what do I feel like doing that day? Now, I do want to acknowledge that in some approaches like bodybuilding, where you're looking to, kind of attack muscles in different ways, you can go in with a soft idea and say like, all right, I really want to work triceps today. And then just sort of go as you feel like, as long as you hit it with intensity and sometimes work to failure. That works if you're a more advanced level. But if you're a strength athlete, you need to have a plan for success. So you have to have a program, okay? A program. This is going to be a key word over and over, okay? So one of the things that's good about programs is that, they have a specific dedicated end outcome, okay? Now with strongman, that can get a little complicated, because if you're training for a 5-event show, you can have 5 different things that are totally different from one another. And then if you have a second show that's a couple weeks after that, third show a couple weeks after that, you might be looking at 15 different things that are a little different, right? Like, just like presses alone, you could have 4 or 5 or 6 types of presses. You could have 7, 8, 9 types of deadlifts. You could have a show without a deadlift whatsoever. You could have, farmer's walk, sandbag carries, and all sorts of things. So what you need to do is some people can do this on their own where they can write out their own program and just dive right into it. But you have to be doing something where you can have a plan to go into your workout and just get right in and execute successfully. So when we're talking about habits, I want you to think about how can you get your mind and your decision fatigue out of these things so that you can apply yourself fully into better areas. So if you have a program, if you already know what you're going to do going into the gym, then you can think about things that are at that next level, such as applying power to a movement or embracing, engaging your core a little bit more. If you're wasting mental energy, I'm wondering like, okay, well, I want to do log, but how many sets or reps should I do? Then you're kind of wasting some mental energy and space on, you're just wasting mental energy and space. I think you get my point here. So there's a lot of different programs that are out there. If you're really stuck and you don't have anything, you can't find something that works for you and your specific goals, hire a coach. So now I've been working with my coach for almost 2 years, and like I have no idea sometimes why he programs things the way that he does, but I don't really even second guess it, and I just show up. I look at it straight on my phone because it's auto loaded to the app, and I just get to work. So if I have warm ups, if I have specific lifts, like right now I have a mix of Olympic lifts, specific stretches, and calisthenics. Like I'm not really worried about why, because I believe and I trust that he is taking me to where I want to go. Now, that's also kind of another important part of this is a lot of these notes are going to be all over the place, but we'll tie them all together. Is you always have to believe. You always have to believe in what you're doing. You have to, understand that what you're doing is putting you towards a desired result. Okay. So if you're training again, like let's say your goal is a 1 rep max log press. If you're going to do just like 200 reps at 50% and just totally crush your body, that's not really going to put you in the direction that you want to go. So when you're getting into these things, find something, let's say dedicated 1 rep max program, just have some faith and some confidence in it. And that alone is going to allow you to have greater success in the program. Okay. So you have to train. That's kind of step number 1. Number 2 is you have to recover. Okay. This is potentially more important than anything else. So recovery, there's a lot of different assets to this, but you have to sleep. Now, this is a really, really big one under recovery. If you can get this right, these things that we're about to cover, it's going to 10x your gains and also just make you feel better day in, day out. So first one is sleep. Sleep is huge, okay? Now, what's really good about sleep, and as a general good, like sleep and health hygiene practice, is you have to do your best to be in as much rhythm as possible. So I've learned from a lot of good coaches, but my first coach and my mentor, Josh Bryant, famously wrote the Jailhouse Strong series. And what that was based on is, what is this stigma or this thing about guys that go into prison or jail and they come out like swole and like jacked AF. So what one of the keys to that is it's just routine. Okay. You have to always remember your body and your brain are connected in so many more ways than we can possibly understand. So if we can get into these rhythms, then we're going to be pushing ourselves to be more conducive to success, right? That means going to sleep at the same time every day for the same amount of times. You're just kind of triggering your system to know like, hey, it's time to go to sleep, which will allow you to get into deeper sleep more regularly. If you train at the same time every day, then it's kind of like it's go time. You're training your body just to like be prepared in that moment. Now, that's one of the reasons why, outside of these habits, that it's good to shift some of your workouts around. If you have a competition coming up and you're somebody who trains first thing in the morning, you're not going to be in a state physically or mentally where you're used to competing during the day. So if at all possible, even if it's once or twice, like in the weekend, you need to start getting in some workouts that are, again, ideally around the same time that you will be training at, because it's just a connection subconsciously to have your body perform at the exact time that you need to be. Now let's think about this, going way, way, way back, biologically, and like as we've evolved as humans before we had all this technology, like our whole lifestyles were very, very tied to the circadian rhythm. Okay. Now I understand things are not as easy to accomplish in this manner, but you do need to try and get your rhythm lined up with sunrise and sunset for a lot of different reasons. One, obviously, like when it's darker, you're just going to be more inclined to sleep deeper. Two, there's things like you can get morning sunlight. If you're doing things like getting morning sunlight in your face, in your eyes, the type of wavelength that the sun literally emits earlier in the morning will energize you. This is scientifically proven. And as it's setting, even if you're to look at the sun as it's going down at sunset, don't look straight at it, of course, but that's a different type of wavelength that's filtered through the air that induces relaxation. Okay. Now I want you to also notice these red light glasses, things like this. This is getting my brain to like register that it's getting ready for bed in a little bit, because if I'm just looking at that blue light, it's going to keep me awake. It's going to prevent me from falling asleep at the right time. And I will have a less high quality night of sleep. Okay. So not to go on and on and on here. Let's talk about how we can make this sleep a habit, right? So that starts with having as similar as possible, or as close to the same bedtime and wake time as possible. Just try to have that rhythm where it's something you don't even think about. Like every day I get up at this time. Make a decision of what it means for you and your lifestyle and just make it the case. This is something where morning routines help a whole lot. If you're setting yourself up in the right way, if Tony Robbins calls it priming, if you wake up and you prime yourself correctly each day and you have these set of actions that are just kind of automatic, that build on each other to get you in a good mood, to get you in a good spirit, to energize you right away, you're going to ride that wave all day long. So a lot of people will wake up and the first thing they do is mindlessly reach over to their phone, check notifications, and that connects you to, first off, a lot of nonsense that's not any good for you. But second off, it's putting that blue light back in your face to where it's going to artificially energize you and actually make your system get a little more tired. So when we're talking about our kind of like day in, day out habits, what's tied to recovery is your morning routine. Now, one thing that's important about the morning routine is it's almost kind of like a joke, right? Ever since Andrew Huberman has come out real popularly, people will say like, oh, you have to, I wake up, I have my moringa tea, and then I jump in my cold plunge, and then I do my grounding, my bounding exercises, and then I jump in my sauna, then I do my cold plunge again, and then I meditate for 45 minutes, and then I do Pilates, and then I, go for a half-mile run, where they're listing these like 10 things that are optimal, or so they say, for success. But I think that really kind of ends up harming a lot of people, because we all don't live these like really, really luxurious and exotic and full of free time lifestyles where we can do all of these different things. So if you're making a morning routine, just think about, again, what is conducive to my success? I don't have a very complicated one for myself right now, and this changes seasonally. Like as I'm in an off-season protocol right now for Strongman, I get up and go to the gym first thing in the morning, but my morning looks like wake up, I do have a cold plunge that I jump in, I dress, I make my espresso and my water, I go right to the gym and I put on an audiobook or a podcast that's positive and uplifting and motivating specifically to the goals that I'm trying to set. So that's not really a whole lot there, but it's getting me in a place where I'm starting my day with positive action, something that's good and wakens me up in a nice, alert, positive, healthy way, and then sets the tone for success. Because after that, I'll have some morning training clients. Then I get to come home, do my computer work. But like I'm so active right out the gate that tends to carry all day long. So you don't have to do these like 50 to 60 different things. You don't have all the exotic things like red light therapy, blah, 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 blah. But what are like, even two things you can do that are healthy to get you going? What can you do to stick to and this and that? I've tried to do things like, journaling. I've had kind of a harder time sticking with that one in the morning, but some people are very successful at doing that. When I am more geared up and like going into a strongman competition or my training is heavier, I tend to find that I perform much, much better after having a very big full meal in me and then training like 2, 3 hours later. So what I will do instead as I get into that is I use that morning time as like meditation where I'll meditate for 20, 30 minutes. But it's already decided and it's putting myself like in the right place instead of just getting up like aimlessly going to work or something like that. So recover, sleep, morning routine. Let's talk about movement. Okay. So, right, we need to be moving in order to really just stay in recovery. Now, this could correlate with programs, right? So, your program could potentially include active recovery protocols where you are required to do things like get 10,000 steps or perform extra cardio sessions. So if that's the case, excuse me, you're already set there. But this is one that can get a little tough for some people because a lot of people have desk jobs. A lot of people just like the comfort of their home. If it's a day like today where it's really cold, it's very difficult in order to get up and get moving. But the reality is, like, if you're just sitting still, you're not allowing a lot of blood flow through your whole body. So if you're training really, really hard and then you just go and like just sit, soreness is going to build up. You're not going to recover faster. You're not going to digest your foods as efficiently. So how can we work in, movement as part of our regular routine? Getting back into the morning routine, if you train in the afternoon or you train later in the day, even doing things like starting your day with a 10-minute movement or so, could be a stretch, could be a walk, could be yoga, like whatever. That's one way to just sneak in a little bit of movement that's extra that'll allow you to recover. On that note, just like out of habit now, no matter what workout I'm doing, I'm putting myself 5 minutes on a stationary bike before I start any of my other warm-ups before I work out. So again, we're thinking about like cumulative efforts that are going to stack up over the year. So just think about it this way. If I was going to do 4 workouts every week for 52 weeks, looking at 20 minutes a week, so 20 times 50, 1,000 extra minutes of cardio, of light cardio that will add up over the year if I just do 5 minutes before every single one of my training sessions. And that's all this is. None of this are things that we like need to take drastic, massive action on. Now, I don't want to discourage that, but you have to sustain what you're doing, right? The biggest pitfall that a lot of people have with these like New Year's resolutions is they do all these 10 things at once and they do take massive positive action, but it's like too much to handle all at once. Okay. So far we've talked about, again, like habit, like get a program that you believe in so you can just show up to the gym and apply your highest self towards that. Next part is recovery. Sleep. Get your sleep dialed in. This is something that you absolutely have to do if you want to be successful and just like a happy, healthy person. You do need to have some sort of positive morning routine, individualized to yourself, and you need to have some level of movement. So one thing that I've had to do that I'm only okay at is go out and get some extra steps. I wish I was a little better at that. I'm improving, but I'm doing better because I have a conditioning program that's up in the Strongman Club that's keeping me accountable to get up and do the recovery work that I have to. All right, so train, recover, eat. Boom. You have to eat, okay? Now, this is another one that a lot of people slip on is, not only having foods ready to go, but like knowing what to eat, all right? So one of my biggest suggestions right out the gate is if you are not tracking your foods, start tracking it, okay? Now, there's a couple different ways to go about that, right? The first one is just track everything whenever you eat it immediately, okay? Now, I do not believe you whatsoever if you say that you do not have time to track. If I were to take your phone right now, go to your settings, and see how much time you spend on your apps, it's guaranteed enough time to track your foods. If you're on your phone for more than 10 minutes a day, you have enough time to track your foods. Okay. Now, for some people, that's a whole brand new thing. Maybe you've never done it before, and that's cool. But this all comes down to, we don't want to guess. Like I said, with training, you need a training program that's pushing you in the right direction, not just guesswork. All right. So eating without tracking is like working out and not training. You may be like, oh, yeah, I'm eating plenty of protein. Okay, well, how much protein? I don't know. Right? Like, oh, yeah, I worked my log presses today. Oh, cool. What percentage? What did you do? How many sets and reps? Oh, like 3 heavy sets. I don't know. Right? Like it's very similar. We have to measure these things. What gets measured gets managed. Now, a lot of these apps have like automatic built-in calorie recommendations. The ones that I would recommend, my favorite one is called Macro Factor. Okay, Macro Factor. So that's really good at providing very high quality nutritional recommendations for your macros and your micros, and it's easy to track. Now, sometimes though, that's like not really enough. Like I'll be honest, sometimes I slipped up and I had a little bit of like extra food here or there, like over the holiday season. So like as I was going into OSG this past year, I wasn't as close as I wanted to be for my weight class. I didn't want to do a really monstrous cut like I've done for some shows in the past. So in order to take my brain out of it, I hired somebody to literally just tell me what to eat. Because while these foods will give you the macros that you need to hit, it still takes some mental energy to, decide, all right, well, I'm going to eat this at this time, this at this time, this at this time. But you can kind of make these things automatic habits if you were to do something like hire a nutritionist. And this guy actually gave me a very successful approach that I would have not have taken myself, but I'm glad I did because I just believed in him, listened to what he said, didn't think about it, and spent more of my mental energy on the right things. Okay. Now, regardless of if you have somebody telling you what to do or if you're making your diet plan yourself, you have got to prep your meals, bro. You have got to prep your meals. You just have to. Okay. Not only is it going to save you money, but it's going to allow you to regularly eat higher quality of food. I don't need to like go on and on and on and make this a whole thing about nutrition tonight, but right, those little like micronutrients, the way things are processed, the way things are cooked, makes a huge difference. Okay. Now let's kind of relate this back to like sleep, morning routine, and movement, because I want to come back to this point where if we do these things correct, like this should stack and complement each other to get that compound effect. If we're training really hard, right, we're going to need protein to recover from all that. We're going to need carbs to train hard. We're going to need sleep to really get the most of this recovery to combine with the nutrition and eating. So you just got to start doing this stuff, man. But when you're prepping, you're having higher quality foods that's going to complement your easier digestion that you're getting because of good sleep, a good morning routine, and good movement. Is going to complement those hard workouts that are putting you in the direction that you're going to go. You just cannot be overstated. I mean, quality is quality. You really can't sacrifice quality. Now, if you're somebody who has never really tracked your foods, the very first thing you need to do is figure out how to regularly, sustainably hit your macros. A lot of people get caught up right out the gate and do these things like where they have to, like, they're going to cut out all seed oils entirely. Now, I'm completely, totally an advocate of that, but it's most important to figure out how you are going to get your protein amount in every single day, and that's how and why we should prep. So think about kitchen tech that you can use. Crock pot, Instant Pot, air fryer, those are my top 3. I make rice in my Instant Pot every single day. I make bulk batches of chicken breasts 2-3 times a week, several pounds at a time. I can make 4 to 5 pounds of a chuck roast in my Instant Pot in about 45 minutes to an hour. So I've got this stuff all the time, just a big thing of ground beef in my big cast iron pan. And then I've got all this food ready to go for many, many days. This also, again, is another thing that takes our decision fatigue out of this, because we're not going to sit around and think, well, like, what am I going to eat next? If you know you have like all of this beef and rice or sweet potatoes in your fridge, you're good to go. You just have to put it together, measure, track, and get the amounts right. So very imperative. Okay. Now we've covered train, recover, and eat. All right. So these are very simple, basic ones, but not everybody does them. So it's always important to review these things. It doesn't matter how good you are. It doesn't matter where you've been and how well you've done. You cannot ever skip on having a good program, being on top of your recovery, including your sleep and movement, and eating the correct high quality foods. But the last one that we're going to really dive into today is, I'm just going to say, your mind. All right. So there's a couple different ways to approach your mental habits. Okay. Again, these can complement each other correctly and 10x each one before it. Now, if you're somebody who gets up at first thing in the morning, is what you do is just mindlessly check your phone, you're getting sucked into those algorithms, whether it's just your emails or your Instagram or any of that stuff, where it's intentionally made to bait you and try to get an emotional reaction out of you. Now, I obviously utilize a lot of social media. You are watching me through YouTube right now. You probably heard about this on my Instagram, my Twitter, or my Facebook. Okay. So I'm not saying don't use those things, but this relates to how can we start our day to be thinking like a winner. Okay. Now, if you do things like, this is why I like my cold plunge. I do this much more so for mental benefit than anything else. This is something where when I do it, every single time, doesn't matter how many times I've done it, I sit there thinking, fuck, I don't want to do this. Then when I do it and get out, I'm like, hell yeah, I did it. Let's go. I can do anything. Boom. Okay. So how can you do those little things? It's kind of coming down to doing the little things that you don't want to do and building small successful habits and victories over and over and over and over again. But there's other things that we can do here. My favorite, or one of my favorite ones, is just meditation or quiet time. All right. I'm just going to put quiet. Okay. Quiet. All right. So you need some sort of quiet time. No matter who you are or what you're doing, there's all sorts of just clutter, chatter, just crap going on all over the place. So you need to find an outlet that allows you to get out of your head and just relax, or be in some sort of like flow state where you're not thinking about traffic, that person at work, that person that's irritating you online. You have to find a way to remove yourself from that, to literally cleanse your palate. So once again, we can put our mind and our focus into the things that we can get the most out of. So if you're going into your training program and all you're thinking about is, man, like, oh, that mean lady that cut me off in traffic today, you know, you're carrying a negative state, a negative emotion that literally tenses your body and reduces your power potential. So you are not going to be lifting to your fullest. Now, if you regularly practice your quiet time, you're going to get to a place where you are somebody that's able to just let one thing in and let it right out. And that's very important, because, you know, if you're somebody that wants to compete and do well, it's very rare that everything is going to go your way. It will happen probably eventually if you do enough shows, but it's very rare, you know. So if you have a mistake, what we want to be able to do, or just a, you know, poor performance or a tough event, we want to be able to just shake it off and just shift gears right away into that next one. All right. Now that also, again, routine and planning and strategy, like, all goes into this. But just a very personal example for me, at OSG this past year, I knew that I was going to have a less great performance on the log as event number one, but I knew that my second event was one of my best ones. Now, if I let the lower performance on the log ruin me, then I would not have been able to focus and put all of my best self into the yoke. But because I do things like regularly meditate, practice quiet time, I was able to immediately shift gears and go right in and have a very successful run on the yoke, which ultimately led me to making the finals. Okay. So mind, quiet. Okay. Let's talk about, I'm going to call it brainwashing. Brainwashing. Okay, so your subconscious is really, depending on who you ask, 90 to 95% of your mind, right? So it's always on. Your conscious is the thing that's making these decisions that you can control, like this or that. But your subconscious is always on. It's always taking inputs from all sort of different things. So if you're somebody that likes to consume a lot of the news, or you like to consume like podcasts or TV shows that are not really beneficial to your mental state, then guess what? It carries over into everything else. So what can you do, not just in your free time, but those moments when you're driving to work, driving to the gym? What sort of things can you listen to or think about that you have to choose to put you in the right state of mind? Okay. Like this is something that really totally changed the way I just like approach my training and my competitions. Is I actually have not worn headphones for competitions in like quite some time. I just don't need them anymore, man. Like, it's just a weird thing that's shifted. But I used to love listening to a lot of like gangster rap and hard like metal music and stuff. But a lot of that music is subconsciously, like those lyrics are not who I want to be, and not the way I want to live my life. Like just gangster rap is, bitches, hoes, drugs, gang banging. Like, okay, cool, but that's not me. I want to, be strong, be positive, be happy, and lift weights and get better than I was the day before. Obviously, some rap is like that, so like you could choose that. Heck yeah. But like Pantera, like I hate to say it, like I love Pantera. I've listened to so much of them over the years. A lot of their music is basically like, get up in my face, I'm gonna kick your ass, and that's not really what I'm trying to do. So you got to think about like, while this stuff may get me in some sort of mood to like, really go and get after it, like, is it actually serving you to allow you to be your best self? So I don't know if anybody's heard of Akira the Don. This is actually one of his shirts. He's got a lot of different like tracks where it's music, but it's like motivational speeches that are laid over it. So I like to consume that sort of stuff, even if I'm just doing work and have it existing in the background, because like I'm allowing that positive brainwashing to take effect. You don't have to totally get all of this stuff out of your life, but you really do have to consider like what's going in to these ears and what's really like my goal. Like my goal is to be as strong as possible and as successful as possible. If all I'm listening to is like sad, dopey music, or like music about, being angry and fighting people, like that's completely at odds with what I want to do. So how can you positively brainwash yourself? Another great example of this is like, I love watching like these action movies, especially the old Arnold ones, that just tell the story of a hero rising above like the craziest circumstances and getting the job done, just because it's a motivator for me. It allows me to just think positively about overcoming anything, even if I'm just watching something like Die Hard, like I watched 2 weeks ago for Christmas. That's the type of brainwashing we want. So you really need to be very selective in what you're doing so that you think positively and encouragingly about your goal, which will allow you to believe in yourself, your program, your routines, and your foods. As I said right at the beginning, your brain and your body are connected in so many more ways than you could ever imagine. There's still over 95% of the gut bacteria in our body to be identified and figured out what it does exactly. But what we do know is that all the bacteria in our gut, they call it your second brain. So when these things are linked, the way you think is connected to the way you eat. The way you eat is connected to the way you think. The way you eat is connected to how you recover and how you perform and train. So these things all have to like kind of blend together, right? Now, last thing I'll say about the mind is just finish with kind of where we started, is you just have to believe. You just have to. In a lot of my videos and my writings and my books, I talk about the placebo effect. We've all heard of this, okay? One of the most popular examples that I give a lot is there's a Harvard rash cream study where they took a whole bunch of different participants and they gave them all the cream. Now, some people had a rash already, some people did not have a rash, but what they would do is they gave them different examples. They gave, they said this cream is gonna heal your rash. They would also say to the people, this cream is going to make your rash worse. Then they would give the same cream to those people and say, this rash will do nothing. Now, to the people that didn't have anything at all, they would say, this cream is going to cause a rash. Or they also said, this cream is going to do nothing. And they found whatever they told every single person, regardless of circumstance, that it happened. So even these people that were given a cream that was a complete placebo that did nothing, if they were told this is going to cause a rash, it actually started to form a literal rash on their skin. Okay. Now, the opposite happened with those people that had a rash and they said, hey, this is going to heal you. It's a placebo. It did nothing. But because they believed, the body started to heal that rash. So when you believe that my training program is going to get me where I want to go, if you believe my morning routine, my sleep, my movement is getting me to where I want to go, my foods are getting me to where I want to go, and my mind is getting me to where I want to go, you will get there. Now, the caveat with all of this is you have to be open-minded enough to constantly analyze and assess when something is not working. Because sometimes you might be needed to cut weight or something, and you're just not cutting enough calories, or you're doing too many carbs or something like that. And that's when you might need to hand things over like this to a professional, seek outside help, or just do an honest personal self-assessment. Kind of always have to recalibrate. I talk also a lot about, a heat seeker missile or a torpedo works on the same concept. They have their end goal in mind, but it's constantly recalibrating. So even if it knows 100% and it starts firing out at that target, it's constantly making decisions of if it needs to, cut this way, cut that way, if it needs to slow down or speed up, and you need to be doing the same. So when you have these things in place, just always kind of give yourself some check-ins and see what's going on. But this is really why having coaches and like friends and good training partners and people like in your community to keep you accountable is super important, because they'll give you like sort of that tip and say like, hey, what's going on here? And, or whatever, just somebody to bounce your ideas off of. So as we talk about like habits, I want you to think about like where you can kind of start first. If you're not doing any one of these, most people have the training down, right? So awesome. Keep it up. That's the easiest one for sure. No doubt about it. Next, sleep. Really can't recommend enough your morning routine. If you want to like get some ideas about that, feel free to like reach out to me and we can talk that out. Same with foods. You got to figure that one out. And then you got to figure out your quiet time. Okay. So the thing I guess I would like to end this on is, the past year or so, I've been studying a lot from Paul Chek. If you don't know about him, he's a holistic health coach, and he's in his late 60s and still incredibly jacked and strong. And this guy talks about the last 4 doctors that you will ever need. Okay, the last 4 doctors you'll ever need. So according to him, in order to have success, you need to find the balance of these 4 things. We covered 3 of them. So they would be Dr. Diet, Dr. Quiet, Dr. Movement, and then the last one is Dr. Happy. All right, so none of this stuff matters at all if you do not have a good, firm reason that's connected to your true self for why you want to do this. So if you do not have that to begin with, none of this shit matters whatsoever, and you have to figure that out right now. A lot of people chase certain goals. Like me, for example, I was on path to become a lawyer. I didn't want to do that. Fuck that. I didn't want to do that at all. And it ended up being pretty lame and pretty miserable for me. So I got out, got into coaching. Here we are now, love what I'm doing. That inspires me to keep going and do all of these things. You have to remember that, a labor of love is always easier than any sort of other type of labor. If like, I'm going to get that done no matter what, you're going to have an easier time like having an honest self-assessment of like, okay, I have to change up what I'm doing. All right, I have to change up my sleep or any of this stuff. You know, that's always connected again. Like, what do you want the most out of life? You know, that's different to every individual, but it really is important. So, Dr. Diet, Dr. Quiet, Dr. Movement, Dr. Happiness. If you're to take anything away from that today, it's finding the balance of those four things and then taking the first step to developing a new habit. It's proven that a new habit can be developed over 30 days. Sometimes it can take up to 60. That's okay. But let's say that a new habit was 60 days. That's all you could do. You would have 6 new habits, completely brand new by the time we got into 2026. If you started and really showed up and applied yourself, you did 30 days for a new habit, you'd have 12 new habits in 30 days. You know, think about just how powerful that could be if you got started. But you really can only do that if you do one good one at a time, layer, layer, layer. But I do again want you to consider how they can compound and ramp up if you do that successfully. You have your end goal in mind, you believe in yourself, and you know that what you are doing is something that you want to do. Doesn't matter what anybody else says. So that is my presentation here. A little bit of a freestyle talk on that. If anybody has any questions, I'm going to stick around for about a minute or two here. But I appreciate you guys jumping in with me. You know, this stuff I feel pretty passionate about. So I just want you guys to succeed. If you have not done so already, check out clubstrongman.com. So we have all sorts of resources and tools on this. A little over a year ago, I wrote a full mental training ebook that is really all the tools that I use and continue to use for all of these things. And I guess another thing that's important to know too is this constant recalibration. You know, as you get to different levels, you're going to need different things. So you're not always going to just be able to have success with the same thing. I've had a couple different coaches over the years. My very first one, Josh, I still regard him as the best strength coach that is on the planet today. But he was not what I personally needed to get to my next level in strongman. He got me to these insane heights. I learned so much from him, but I had to go outside of what I knew, add in new things, and then that is what allowed me to take it to the next level. So just again, be always open-minded to, you know, what you need and if what you're doing is working. It's okay if you have to take a minute and be like, wow, what I'm doing is not working. And like sometimes it's a hard pill to swallow because you might have been doing the same thing for a long time, long time, thinking that you knew the answers and you didn't. It's okay. No problem. Own it. And let's start moving forward. That's it. Okay. So last minute here. Trapper King was here. What's up? Joseph Tower, my brother. Stay positive and prioritize the recovery, brother. Big Mark, my man. I know you're really good at a lot of this stuff, man. Big on the discipline, Mark, man. I need to get on some of your level with that. I do pretty well myself, but you are the king with that. So, all right, man. About 30 more seconds. If anybody has a question or just whatever, fire away, whether about any of this stuff or anything else. You want to ask me about World's Strongest Manatee? You want to ask me about whatever? I don't care. Here we go. Your time. But if not, we'll wrap up here very shortly. That is that. Boom. Sweet, guys. All right, well, I'm going to call it. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate it. You guys are the best. Check out clubstrongman.com, 7-day free trial. Consistency and obsession. You just have to keep going. That's it, man. Clubstrongman.com, 7-day free trial. All the strength training, mental mindset rituals, and resources you need to become a better strength athlete. So, all right, have a great evening. Thanks for watching and tuning in, and I'll see you guys next time.